with that, I want to extend a warm welcome to Smith Galtney. So you now enter Smith's world.
All right, wonderful. I guess, well, first off, thank you everybody for coming. In person, thank you for everybody joining in on Zoom. Hopefully everything's running smoothly. If not, maybe voice up in the chat or something. We've tried to cover all bases. And, you know, just mainly thank you so much to the Maine Jewish Museum, particularly Nancy Davidson and Nancy Kahn for the opportunity to have this show. I love this space. I've always loved this space. I love the light in here. I love the stained glass, and I've seen so many great shows here.
We have a technical question.
We have a technical question. Okay. Oh, right. Yes.
So for those of you zooming at home, I'm going to go around with Smith's phone.
Right. I was going to.
Okay, you can say
that. So where was I? Anyway, I love this room. I love the color of the windows. I love the light in here. And so to be able to show my work here is a real honor. So thank you, Maine Jewish Museum and the two Nancys. So a couple of technical things. First off, for the people at home who have not seen the show, the pictures are all around. If you'd like, you can go to my website. I'm going to do a little plug. smithgaltney.com. There's a gallery there called Dream Sequence, and it's got all the pictures in the show. So if you want to reference that at any point, that's great. Okay, we are having a technical difficulty here. So I'm glad that I mentioned the website because Nancy was supposed to go around. Is it?
I'm getting this.
What are you doing?
Just getting your screen.
Okay, let's just, we'll forget it. Anyway, I will do, we were hoping that we'd be able to get sort of a pan of the space. What?
It's not going to work.
It's not going to work. Okay. No, I know. Anyway, this is the fun of all of this. So, yes. So anyway, it's not going to happen. So I'll do my best to sort of show you the pictures or explain things. Certainly if someone asks a question, I will repeat it for all of you wonderful people at home. So anyway, moving on, let's get this thing going. First off, I guess what I'll do to start, so I'll give you a kind of overview of the show, and then I'll tell you a little bit about myself and how the show came together and everything. So first off, and I'll have my little crib notes just in case I happen to blank. So first off, you know, my work is centered on the theme of experience, the lives we live, the things that we gain and lose as we grow older. And I'm particularly fascinated by the past and how it's just like this living thing that keeps expanding and sort of folding over on itself and reinventing itself and revealing new things. So that's a big thing for me. As a photographer, I'm very drawn to the everyday, you know, the little details, sort of those little moments of beauty and mystery that we spot every day and that carry us through. That's a big thing for me. And in very much the same way that like reading books introduces you to like new worlds and new ideas. The very act of taking pictures for me, you know, just having a camera, you know, really helps me to see things that I normally wouldn't see. It takes me to places that I normally wouldn't go. And it introduces me to people that I otherwise wouldn't meet. So like in so many ways, you know, photography helps me to live a better life. But as much as it can, you know, take stock of things and create a document of something, it's also this incredibly artificial medium, you know. All of the pictures in here like all of them are less than a second, like, 125th of a second, and of any given moment. So, what kind of truth is there? And the other thing that's really interesting is that, even if it's a longer exposure, it's not like a movie or anything. It's like everything is just like stacked on top of each other and jammed into this one frame. So it's like a very subjective, very selective, and medium, and it's hugely open to interpretation, which I really love. Particularly when you have more than one picture and they start to speak to each other, because that's when the real fun starts. Because you could have, like, say, a picture or a portrait of like two handsome men, clean cut looking in a suit. You can put that on the wall on its own. But then next to it, if you put up like a picture of an axe, then suddenly they don't look so clean cut anymore. And then you've got a story. And that story may or may not have anything to do with who those two men really are. And that's something that I really love about all of this, particularly the storyteller part of me. I was recently reading an interview with the photographer Dwayne Michaels, who I'm a huge fan of. And there was this quote that was just like, oh my God. He said, "I'm always trying to photograph the nature of things." And he said, in order to do that, you have to abandon the facts. And I was like, okay, because that's basically what this show is about. The show is about trying to land on some kind of truth by loosening the grip on reality, not getting so hung up on facts and stuff. So I will start by telling you that I've already started, obviously. Anyway, I was born and raised in New Orleans. I kind of came of age, I was a teenager in the 80s. And from a very early age for me, it was really like books and music and movies, just the arts and everything, particularly the pop culture was just like, I was immediately an obsessive about it. And the 80s was like a really great time to be obsessed about these things. There was MTV and like John Hughes movies, and all the movies had like these great soundtracks, and they were very flashy, very fast paced. And, and plus there was like VCRs and video stores and cable. So if you really wanted to, you could immerse yourself in all of these ways of visual storytelling. And there was a particular movie when I was about 12 or 13, Francis Ford Coppola put out this movie called Rumblefish. It was with Matt Dillon and Mickey Rourke. And it was based on a book that I loved by S.E. Hinton. She also wrote The Outsiders. And it was a really arty movie, particularly for a kid, for a youth movie. It was really arty. He shot it in black and white. There's a lot of time-lapse photography of like rolling clouds and shadows stretching across the pavement, and a lot of like atmospheric fog and crazy lighting. And it was the first time I'd ever seen a movie that was based on a book that I had read, and just the way that this man had decided to tell the story just left a huge impression. And when I went to college, I decided that I wanted to write about pop culture. So after college, pretty quickly, I was very lucky. I was able to start a career as an entertainment journalist. Wrote for a lot of magazines. I did it for about 15 years. And it really gave me a lot of experience with being out in the field, as they say. I interviewed a lot of people, some pretty famous ones. I got a lot of experience with sort of going to a place that I didn't know and kind of sussing out the environment and the details, and sitting with someone, and for not a very long period of time, but getting a sense of who they were, and then going back to the office and figuring out how I was going to tell their story, which was a great thing for me to do. So I kind of thought I was going to be a writer, given that I was writing these things, and I was working with a lot of people who went on to write books, and I thought that was going to happen for me. But the truth was that writing for me, the actual act of writing, was excruciatingly painful and torturous for me. I couldn't barely write a sentence. It still sometimes happens, but I could barely write a sentence without being like, this is horrible. Why am I doing this? I'm a fraud. I'm not a writer. I only wrote for deadline. I never wrote on my own. I never wrote like rough drafts. I always like wrote immediately for word count, for format. And, you know, it really wasn't until I was 40 that I started taking pictures that I really discovered or felt like a creative outlet that I felt at ease with, that I actually felt kind of fearless about. Like, if I took a bad picture, I would just take another picture, you know, and that never happened with writing. I was like, bad sentence, I'm off to go get a muffin, you know, and some wine. And so I decided to, you know, take a week-long workshop at Maine Media Workshops. It was an intro to digital class. This was in 2011 in the fall. And I had this amazing teacher named Kate Izor. And one thing I noticed throughout the week was that she always had a camera with her, like a little Leica film 35mm camera. And
Who was it?
Kate Izor. Oh, I-Z-O-R. I loved her. One of the best teachers I've ever had in my life. She totally changed my life. But she always had this camera with her at breakfast, lunch, dinner, in class. If we were just, you know, she always had it with her, and I never saw her take one picture with it. And, you know, towards the end of the week, I was like, why do you have this camera with you? And she was just like, you never know. And that really stuck with me. And ever since then, I'm rarely without a camera. I mean, there's times, phone excluded, you know, which is always the emergency flotation device or whatever, but like, I need the photo only device with me, or else I start to feel very nervous, because the thought of missing something, I'm fine if I have a camera and I miss something because I'm nervous about approaching somebody, or I was just fumbling and wasn't ready, or, I mean, I'm not fine with it. It still hurts greatly. But to miss it just because I'm ill-equipped, it just feels like very much like a failure. So, so that said, you know, kind of a little word about my process or whatever. I mean, I'm pretty omnivorous when it comes to image collecting. Like, I'm always shooting. I'm always, I shoot with many, many different cameras, both film and digitally. You know, I'm just constantly in this state of taking more pictures, always hungry. And I have friends who I love and really admire, who are really good at pre-visualizing something in a very deliberate shoot. You know, they pre-visualize it, they construct the image, they know exactly the story that it wants to tell. And I do that a little bit. I take a lot of portraits, which are definitely a more controlled setting, but it's just way more natural for me to just be in the world and keeping my eyes open and be ready to make a move when I see something. And that will include anything, you know, my husband, my friends, my family. Don't have a dog at the moment, but my dog was, you know, my dog taught me how to be a photographer. And, you know, the landscape, strangers I may, you know, cross paths with, details, the way light falls. I'm very big on light, although that's really funny to say. That's kind of like a chef thing. Like, you know, I really love food. And so, gosh, hold on. I knew I was going to have to do this at one point. And I don't really shoot with a project in mind. You know, it's not like this is my husband actually. It's not like I took this picture and I was like, wow, this is going to really be like, you know, this is going along with my series about like people in jacuzzis who are feeling like ennui, you know. It's not like, it's just, oh, there's something and I'll take it. And which can be very frustrating because it can often feel very aimless. It can often just feel like I'm trigger happy and all I'm doing, because it's about 98% of what I shoot. easily probably more, is just utterly useless. And, you know, so while I have friends who were like working on projects that have like a beginning and a middle and an end, and I'm just sitting there like, I don't know what I'm doing, you know? And, but here's the thing is that and this is what I didn't do in writing, which is like, just the shooting, it's not a waste of time. It's, first off, it's fun. It gives me a buzz. And it's always staying engaged. It's like exercise for me, you know, it's keeping my eye tuned and all of that stuff. And so, you know, and another funny thing regarding writing and photography is that a year and a half ago, I took a workshop with this really wonderful photographer named Justine Curlin. And she knew I was a writer. She knew I wanted to make a book that mixed writing and text. And she suggested this book, and it's a book about writing, and it's called Several Short Sentences About Writing. And it's by a guy named Verlin Klinkenborg. And I was like, with that title and that author's name, I'm in. And I've read tons of books about writing because, you know, it's like, why am I writing? I'll read another manual about it. And this one was the coolest book about writing because it actually really wasn't about writing. It wasn't about like, you gotta have your theme, you gotta do character, and you gotta write like 2,000 words a day, and it's about process and mechanics and everything. This guy was just like, forget about writing. Like, he didn't mean not write, but he was like, forget about like this image you have of like a writer, like just sitting at a desk and cranking out a novel. He was like, just forget about that. And his big thing was just going out in the world and noticing. He said, you have to practice noticing. And what he meant was like being in the world, noticing things. If you happen to see a woman sitting in front of you with a mask on and she's nodding at you and she's looking at you, you know, you notice like something about her, you know, and that there's something kind of special there. Do you don't immediately clobber it with metaphor and meaning and everything. Just notice it, make a note, and put it aside. Like, don't forget about it, just put it aside. And it was so weird because I was like, oh my God, this is the way that I shoot. And it was just like kind of this mind-blowing moment to realize that like for most of my adult life, I wished I had written a certain way. And then to suddenly realize that I was now actually, and I had been writing that way only with a camera. So it was just a huge realization for me. And so kind of what happens from there and how something like this comes together is that, you know, I have this huge catalog on my computer and it's basically just this giant notebook of all of my noticings. And, you know, sort of between, you know, the act of taking more pictures, like all the time in my spare time, I'm in my catalog, just looking back, going back and looking. And what happens is that there's usually pictures, like there's some pictures that I take that are just like, okay, that's definitely one. Unfortunately, folks, you can't see one, but there's a picture I took.
I'll spin it.
Okay, spin over there. Anyway, we'll see. This could be risky. But anyway, should I what?
Which photo?
The bloody ice. There's blood. There's a photo over there, way over there, as you can see. It's basically deer's blood on ice. We live on a lake, and we woke up one morning and there had been a coyote incident. The coyotes needed some food, and so there was oh wow, we're doing a full 360.
There we
here.
go.
Everybody gets to see everybody now. This is a community now. Like when I took that picture, it was immediately like, that's a picture, you know? So some resonate instantly. And then there's like these other pictures that just feel like total throwaways, you know? This one to a certain degree. This was took like in a cab when we were in Cartagena. We were going to our hotel, and I was like, oh, that looks interesting. I have no idea how this amazing lavender purple prince, like purple rain thing kind of happened. So there's these ones, these throwaway ones, and that's why I'm always going back, because it's really wonderful how, like, over time, these things become more than what I think they are at first. And there's another one over there. You don't have to pay it, it's okay. If y'all can see the one, y'all can go look at it online if you want. Over there, you see the two women with the wine glasses over there. I was just at a family reunion, and that's actually my cousin Sally and my sister Eleanor. And I took a picture of them, and I loved their shirts. So I just went down, took a picture of their shirts, and over the course of a few months, I showed it to a couple of friends. Everyone really responded to it, and the picture became something else. Like, now when I see that picture, I don't think of my cousin. I don't think of my sister. I think of just these two women with wine glasses, and it's sort of something broader, you know? And it was funny because somebody was actually here right when the show opened, and they saw that picture, and he was like, wow, it just looks like they're holding on to those wine glasses for dear life. Which is something you probably all felt at once, or twice. But anyway, so there's that, and let's see, I'm gonna just cheat again. And so basically what happens is, you know, out of these thousands, you know, these tens of thousands of pictures, you know, this short list starts to form. And so I'll print them, you know, and put them up on the wall in my studio. I'll show them to friends. I have a wonderful, wonderful network of mentors and colleagues, and I'm part of a crit group that meets regularly. And I really, 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 really can't stress the importance and the benefit and the pleasure of having a network of people that you respect and admire and that you can meet with, because it's like, particularly right now in this day and age, you know, you can sit, you know, you can be a photographer, you can sit at your computer, you can post on Instagram, and, you know, everyone can tell you how great you are, and you'll be in your own little bubble echo chamber, and you won't grow one bit, you know. But if you meet with people, you can tell if someone, like, when someone says, wow, I really love this one, you know, but then they don't say it about the other 10, you know, like which ones, and then you show it to the next person, and they're like, wow, I really love this one. And maybe it's another one. So it's like you're able to kind of whittle it all down. And so, you know, between meeting with friends and everything, what starts to happen is, like, the stuff on the wall, it's funny. It's like so much of it immediately is like, yeah, it just kind of falls by the wayside. And then it just gets more and more like a short list. And then the fun part is, like, it's actually it's more than fun. It's actually just a huge relief because I start to see things line up. And it usually happens for me, like, it's really weird. It has about a 2-3 year thing, you know, it doesn't happen like too frequently. But actually back in 2019, I had a show at USM. It was black and white. You know, it was all black and white. That's just what happened. I started to see those pictures link up and everything. And this one, it was in the fall. I started to notice, like, all the color. There was, like, all these pictures that had these bold color schemes, and they had these sort of offbeat, kind of strange moments in them, like a little element of mystery in them. Like, maybe there was a sense that something had just happened, or something was about to happen, or lingering outside of the frame or something. And the way they were starting to speak to each other, and the people in my crit group were responding really well. And I don't know if the color, in fact, it certainly has something to do with the pandemic. When we were in lockdown, there's a photo of a rainbow that is sort of the first thing that, you know, you see in the stairwell. You're not able to see it. Sorry, guys. There's a photo of a rainbow. But I mean, I have a feeling most people here have seen this picture of the rainbow. I've been on Instagram, and it's been on Instagram, and you know, a rainbow is, like, incredibly schmaltzy and super, like, cheesy and very, very cliched and just painfully earnest. And I took that picture during lockdown. I was having one of those days where it was, I mean, like a lot of those days, where it was like a listless feeling. There's this horrible man in the news and in my phone, and you know, and one, you know, usually in the evening, you just kind of put everything aside, and I'd put on music and kind of dance a little bit, and my husband would make dinner, and the smells would really kind of bring my senses alive. And I went outside, and there was this rainbow, and I took a picture of the rainbow, and I was like, I love this picture of this rainbow, you know? And I was like, you know what, I'm gonna embrace this rainbow. And I was talking to a friend, I'm gonna really embrace the rainbow. And not be ashamed of it. So that's why I put it there. Because, you know, like, I do have a chip on my shoulder sometimes about feeling, you know, I'm relatively new. I have friends who've been doing this for decades, and I'm relatively still, you know, even after 10 years, I feel new to this. And so, like, I still feel here and there, I think most people who make art and do work feel it a little bit, that they're maybe not serious enough, or that their work isn't like full of enough significance and meaning, and you know, I don't know. So it was like, I've always tried, you know, made conscious efforts sometimes to go for the gravitas thing, and the rainbow has really been me just embracing and saying, you know what, rainbows have gravitas. So it's my punk rock rainbow. It's just me being me. So and eventually. And another thing that really swayed the sort of final cut of the edit here was the room itself. You know, there was a few times I came here in the months leading up to the show, and you know, like you guys, I really had only been here for in the evenings, you know, and when the light is like a lot dimmer. But in the mid-afternoon, like the sun's coming through and filtering through these things, and there's color all over the floor. And so it was really just more and more like color and light and everything. So as for the titles, I don't know if y'all have seen the titles. Some people have been like, the titles, I don't understand them. I don't get them, you know. There are a lot of phrases. They're for weeks. But let me explain something. I mean, the titles are really me falling back on my you know, falling back as a writer, because I am kind of jealous of writers, because photography can be is so direct and so, you know, representational that, like, you know, if you take a picture of a dog, you know, people are just going to go, oh, so sweet, you know. But a writer can look at a dog and give the dog an inner voice and make the dog talk to other dogs, and give the whole dog a backstory and create just this, you know, this whole thing around the dog. So, so the titles for me are really just like prompts and jumping off points. For weeks, I was, you know, I jotted down, you know, song lyrics and movie dialogue and lines I had read from, you know, books and phrases I liked, and, you know, anything that I thought would make a cool photo title. And when it came to applying them to each picture, I deliberately made sure that nothing in the title directly referenced anything that was in the picture. And it was really just a way of divorcing, you know, disengaging the photo from its sort of real world representation or its bearings, and to really just kind of open it up and give it an inner voice. And what else was I going to say? Basically, oh, in the title, dream sequence. It's actually stolen from, not stolen, it's a pretty, there's this really bad German space rock band named Tangerine Dream, and I don't know how I came across it because it's in my iPod. But they have a compilation called Dream Sequence, and I was trying to figure out, like, what should the show be called? And then I saw Dream Sequence, and I was like, that's it. And but you know, it's, you know, all of these pictures are from my life, all of them. But I stand here and I look around, and this is not my life at all. You know, this is not what my life looks like. It's bits and pieces of it, but arranged this way. And it's more like a really weird, very surreal, like unauthorized biography, or like an unauthorized autobiography. It's like somebody took all these bits and pieces and they put it together and they got it completely wrong. And I really love that. I love the fact that, you know, whatever stories these pictures are telling in this room, they're totally authentic. And I love that people can come in here and find whatever they want in the pictures. So, and that's what I got there. So, thank you. So anyway, we can open it up. Do we have
any questions from
how
people
should we
here?
direct those at home? Or
Let's see.
should they just, should they go, is there a chat or?
This is not, this is a webinar, which
Oh,
is
okay.
different than,
Oh, I think it says Q&A or something like.
here, there's a chat. Here we are.
All right, are there words and things?
Let's see, please.
Okay, why don't we start with a human question? Yes, Martha,
Why bother entitling them in the first place?
that's a good question, you know?
We repeat it.
Oh, yes, I told myself I was gonna do that. She says, why bother titling them in the first place? Which is a good question. And I understand. I mean, on the one hand, titles are totally meaningless. And on the other hand, you're also kind of wasting an opportunity to sort of give the picture this little sidecar of like information. You're really, and I have never titled a photo untitled. I have a really good friend who's actually had a show here, and all he does is title. I either don't have also to me, it's just a rare that's
Compulsion. You call it, maybe it's a compulsion.
a compulsion. Maybe, actually, that's, yeah, I'm a compulsive titler. But it's also kind of a fun thing to do because it's like, they are relatively, I mean, there's moments where it's like, I feel like there is like an earnest title, but there's also moments where it's like, the title means nothing. So you can kind of totally have fun with it, like, and just, you know. Yes.
Can you give an example of one of the titles?
Yes. Shoot,
One
can
of them.
somebody,
How about that?
I know, I just see, I was so random with my titles that, no, I know them, I'm just having a blank right now. So, so this one is called Agitated and Seen on Nightly. It's a lyric from a Roxy Music song. And the song itself is about sort of nightlife and, you know, spiritual bankruptcy, you know, and all of that stuff. Like while you're living the high life, but you're really inside the low life, you know. And I thought, I'm sorry.
You don't think that refers to that picture?
That's-
Well, no, I guess, see, thematically.
That's number 7.
This is number 7.
Okay,
And I
just-
got it. Yeah.
no.
Okay.
I know.
This is fun, guys. Good time. But yeah, no, I mean, what I meant mostly, I mean, thematically, and that's good. I'm glad that you picked up on that. And I should point, that's very aggressive. But like, if there was something that said water or, pools or just that, it's a very like, like if this said, this one here said something like about a church or worship, you know what I mean? Like not so, you know what I mean, right? Yeah. Okay, don't make me speak. Yes.
We have a question from Pamela. Hello, Smith. What is your favorite photo in your exhibit and why?
And why? I'm not gonna do that answer of like, oh, it's so hard to choose one because they're all my children, I'm not gonna do that. But I do have a favorite one. And if you want a pan, I don't know, well, okay, it could be a different one, but I'll tell you the one that I'm drawn to, which is this one. This is a stairwell. We were at a bed and breakfast in Bar Harbor, and it was just a stairwell. It was, again, stained glass. I have a thing, and I've always sort of liked this picture. It's funny because there's a couple of pictures in this show where friends of mine are like, it's borderline just a pretty picture, and they're like, I don't want to like this picture, but I like it. And it's like, it's this close to being just like decorative. But when this printed out, and the light of this sort of like kind of Necco wafer, Jordan almond kind of loveliness. And I just saw the print and I just like was like, I am in love with the tone, the color here. I don't know. I just suddenly was like, that's the one that I've always.
Where did the colors come from?
Stained glass. There's a window right here. And, so I don't know. So yes, how does that answer your question, Pamela? Pamela is actually in this exhibit. You can't see her face, but she's the woman with all the splatter over there. I don't think you'll be able to see it, but
Just a little.
she is a fantastic artist. So, and I was hanging out with her, and I was like, I have to take a picture of your bloody smock.
So on our chat, we have Eleanor and Dave say hello from New Orleans.
Oh wow!
We have Colin seeing these for the first time on your website, and they're absolutely fantastic. Wish I could see them in full color at the museum. Patricia Reef chimes in. Please have him talk about the photos in the exhibit.
Please have him talk about the photos in the exhibit. I would love to do that. So wow. Okay. It's difficult. So
I can move with you.
okay. Well, first off, I will say that, well, all of them are taken digitally. I mean, I guess I can talk technically about them. They're all, there's one over here, there's a portrait over here. Do you want to follow me?
Yes, I do, because someone else just said, can you share a little backstory behind the Adam in the Garden of Eden?
That's very funny because I was just about to walk. Come. So there's this picture.
You may all come.
There we go. Hopefully everything is not getting too wobbly for people at home. So this was a portrait. This is really the only picture in the show that is a setup. I'm pretty sure, actually, Pamela's picture, she was very participatory in that picture. But this is a wonderful photographer named Alaric Beal. I met him last summer at, we took a portrait workshop together at Maine Media with the wonderful, amazing Andrea Modica. So we all paired up for the whole week, and he and I paired up, and we were at someone's house and they had this wonderful garden filled with like all of this hydrangea and everything. And we gotten comfortable enough with each other that I was like, take off your shirt and get in the hydrangea. And he did exactly that, and we took a couple of pictures. And I mean, this is also the fun thing about taking pictures, is that you don't really know what you have until, you know, you go home and you look at it, and there's a mosquito right on top of his head. And I had no idea about it. It was perfectly in focus, and it's wonderful. So, yeah, and I don't know, it's sort of it's different from a lot of the pictures I take. It's very campy. You know, I think it's a little over the top. I don't know. So I think that, I mean, I hope that gives you a little backstory there. But again, the backstory, you know what? People look at this picture and they say, the first thing they say is, who wants to guess the first thing they say? Okay, I'll answer it. No, they say Jesus. Everyone thinks it's Jesus,
Oh.
or a Jesus-like, Christ-like figure in the hydrangea. So, yeah.
Here's a call out from John Kaczynski.
Oh, cool.
Hi, Smith. Sorry I can't be with you all in person tonight. Just curious if you get differently photographically energized when traveling versus around Portland/home, and how does that affect your process?
Well, it really all depends on whether I get moving, you know? If I travel, absolutely. Like if I go somewhere, there's people, recently, like in November, I went to visit 2 friends of mine in New Mexico, and I'd never really driven in that part of the world. And it was like the landscape was so flat, and the night light was just like amazing. There's a picture over there of that. So yeah, like on that trip, I was like jacked, you know. If I'm at home, you know, particularly in the winter in Maine, the winter in Maine, I would say from January through March is, if you went through my catalog, as the least pictures I take. I will start in December with the snow, and then after 2 weeks, I'm over snow. I mean, I love the snow, but just photographically, it's frustrating, and it's also just boring after a little while. Although we live on a lake, the ice is a very much an alive thing. It makes noises, it forms different patterns. There's ice over on the shore over there. So, you know, things happen. But, you know, if I just decide to like stay at home and not do much, my photo taking will act accordingly. But, you know, there's my husband who I love to photograph, and he hates to have his picture taken. So there's a really nice tension there that I've taken full advantage of. So yeah, and sometimes it's just, you know, my mood. It's kind of a good barometer for whether I can, you know, if I feel bad about myself and things, you know, so, but I'll save that for my therapist. So.
Hi, Smith.
Do we
From
want to go back so everyone can sit back down? Or-
we
okay.
can travel, and
Okay.
I'll pan a little bit.
Okay.
And I'll say from Barbara,
I know.
is the picture of the 19th century train car a picture of a picture?
Train car. You mean the pictures with the ultra Orthodox men? That, you know, that's really funny. That is the second time today that someone has referred to that as a train. It's a bus. It's in New York City. And what was the question? It was, oh, is it a picture in a picture? No, it's a captured moment. I was going to say a decisive moment, but that implies that I'm super decisive. It's an indecisive moment. No, I was just walking along, it was raining and I looked up and I snapped it. So no, it's a real thing. All right. Bruce? Are we tapped out on the board?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes, Richard.
Yeah, so over what time span did you draw these pictures from?
You know what? That's another, I would say that they're all actually really recent. There's a picture over there that's from like 2017. Kate, yeah, from like, that's like 2015, 2016. And that's it. Wow, that's a, so no, they're relatively recently. Which is, I don't know, that actually is an interesting thought because it means that I did, you know, pandemic or not, I did see some things that I was pretty engaged with sometimes. And it actually does take a couple of years for me to kind of feel safe with something. But actually, what am I talking about? I'm still talking about this pandemic like it's a new thing. It's like it's already been 2 years. So the rainbow is like 2 years old. You know? God, that hurts to say. Been doing this for so long.
We have one more question. Is there an interesting story behind the Shadow Man?
The Shadow Man. Yes, oh, there's a really interesting story. Well, I don't want to. I think it's a very interesting story. I was on the road between Santa Fe and Roswell, and I'd never driven in that part of the country, and it was getting. I'd never experienced the desert in such a flat landscape, and all my life I've listened to songs about the desert sky and all of that romantic thoughts about it. And I was like, it's flat and there's the sky, what's the big deal? And I was just seeing how richer and richer and all the shades of blue and orange and red that were like just forming around. It was crazy. And I was just driving on this flat land, nothing. And then out of nowhere, like this huge silhouette of this cowboy just came out of nowhere. It was really creepy, very scary. And I looped around and got out of the car, and there's just this like giant like silhouette standing there. I have no idea what it is. It's just this cowboy standing in the middle of nowhere. I was scared. I was really afraid to move like closer towards it. But I was also like in that place where it was just like such utter excitement because I knew I was going to get a good picture, but also like I was on an adventure. And I took it. And it's really funny because I don't, again, the experience versus the picture, I don't look at that and feel scared. At this point, I don't necessarily associate that picture with that memory. Because that's kind of become its own thing. And that was also another picture that my friend was like, I don't want to like this picture, but I do, you know? Maybe he doesn't, but he was just being nice. So.
Any other questions?
I have a
Mary,
comment?
yes.
So I know you said you don't do projects and you're not really, maybe you're finding a new way of writing that complements the way you photograph. Are you eventually going to do a project with those together?
Meredith is asking that, you know, with the writing versus the picture taking, she's asking if there's a way that it's all going to come, if it's ever going to come together. And I really, really hope so. I really, really hope so. You know, some sort of photo memoir. I mean, yeah, that's where it would all go. The one thing that makes me reluctant to do about it is because I have many, many photo books that are text and writing. and I never read the writing. I rarely read the essays in the front and the back. And if it's like one of those books that has like, you know, some sort of prose poetry in it, and, you know, some writers actually do write essays of their own and put it in their books. And I try to read, but it's like photo books, like just have me in a different frame of mind. And it's really ridiculous because it's what I want to do, and I'm not honoring the results. So, but I do want to do that. And it's funny because I was in a bookmaking workshop a year and a half ago with Justine Curlin. And I had like 4 moments of writing it. And in like 8 weeks of this workshop, like not one person mentioned the writing. So I was like, yeah, that's photographers for you. You know. So, yes, Rob.
Smith, you say you do yourself in a digital with all of this. Yeah. Is there, particular types of things like when I do an object to hack, but I try to go manual a lot of my focus on those things because the cameras I have, the autofocus doesn't work very.
Yeah.
How do you work through these things? Where are your settings? Usually on the outdoor stuff, the nature things.
Okay, so Robert's asking, a question about cameras and autofocus and settings and things and the choices I make regarding all of this stuff, correct? Does that sound?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So autofocus is fantastic. And when it doesn't work, it's kind of heartbreaking. But if I have like a manual focus camera and like a 35 film meter camera, and it's really out of focus or it's out of focus in a certain way that it gains something, that's wonderful. The problem with digital cameras is that you can, pardon my language, fuck up with them, but they don't fuck up enough, so it's like, it just looks wrong, and it doesn't lend itself to that. It just doesn't screw up enough. It screws up just a little to make it look like you didn't get it, so I could, do manual focus on my, my digital camera, but my digital camera costs like $3,500. Why wouldn't I use this great? I want to get the $3,500 camera so I can use it like my $100 camera. But I mean, otherwise, I shoot totally and manually. I mean, if I'm out in the world and at a parade or something where it's all about trying to be quick, I will do aperture priority, but most of the time I'm manual because I just like being in control of those things. And it's a fluency thing. It's God, I was going to say something really cheesy, it's like conducting an orchestra. But it does have, I like, it's like, my God, there's another writing analogy, but it's like typing. It's like, I like the hands-on part. So, yeah. Is there anything else on the board or?
We've all asked and answered.
Okay, great, crickets. So I think unless anybody else has something else to say, I will say one last thing, and it wasn't in here, and I want to say it. Because I take so many different kinds of stuff, whenever people ask me, if I'm at a party or whatever, and people say, oh, well, what pictures do you take? And it's always been really difficult for me to answer because it's like I shoot everything. And no one really cares about the answer anyway, so it's like I can't talk too long. But a friend of mine recently referred to me as an everyday photographer, and I love that, But the problem is that sometimes I hear it and it sounds like an average photographer or a garden variety photographer. So if I want to feel, so sometimes I say I photograph the everyday because then it sounds more like an artiste. So on that note, I think we're good, right? All right, wonderful. Well, thank you everyone for coming. I hope everything looked okay on Zoom. that there weren't too many technical glitches and stuff. So anyway, thank you, Zoom. Thank you, real people. And yeah, that's it, right?
Thank you.
All right.